Welcome back to Her Bitter Truth. Today, we're diving into a story that proves you should never mistake silence for weakness. Meet Lorraine Elizabeth Washington. At 62, she was publicly humiliated by her own daughter in front of 43 witnesses. Her daughter called her a failure, still waiting at a bus stop, while she had already arrived. But Jasmine didn't realize that her mother didn't just own the bus stop, she owned the entire world Jasmine was standing on. Stay with us because the lesson Lorraine is about to teach is one for the ages. You won't want to miss a single second of this transformation. Comment your city below and stay until the end.
On November 8, 2024, at exactly 7:47 p.m., my daughter stood in front of 43 witnesses and told me I was still waiting at the bus stop while she'd already arrived at her destination. I'm Lorraine Elizabeth Washington. I'm 62 years old. I smiled, folded my napkin, and went home. What my daughter didn't know was that I owned the restaurant. I owned the building it sat in. I owned the parking lot where her Range Rover was parked. And I owned that Range Rover too. But she was about to learn. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. The Peacock Room wasn't just any restaurant. It was the kind of place where Black excellence came to celebrate itself. Mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers that caught the light just so, and a menu that took Southern soul food and elevated it into art. Sweet potato gnocchi with brown butter sage, oxtail with truffle Brits, peach cobbler served in individual cast iron skillets with bourbon vanilla ice cream. I discovered it 3 years ago, back when it was a struggling supper club about to close its doors. The owner, a young chef named Marcus, didn't know that the quiet woman who came in every Tuesday for the lunch special was the same person who'd bought his building through Peachtree Holdings LLC. He just knew I always left a good tip and never complained. Tonight, the restaurant was filled with Atlanta's Black professional class. Lawyers, doctors, tech entrepreneurs, real estate developers. The kind of people my daughter Jasmine had spent the last 10 years trying to become. The kind of people she thought I could never be. I sat at table 12, tucked near the back. Not at the head table where Jasmine sat with her husband Devin Montgomery and their friends. Not even at one of the good tables near the windows overlooking Peachtree Street. I was positioned exactly where you'd put a relative you had to invite, but didn't particularly want seen. My outfit was my Sunday best, a plum-colored dress I'd bought at Macy's 5 years ago, pearl earrings my mother left me, and sensible black pumps. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive looking. Just respectable. The kind of clothes that made me invisible in rooms like this. Jasmine, by contrast, sparkled. Her dress was an emerald green sheath that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage used to be. Diamonds at her ears and throat. Anniversary gifts from Devin, she'd told everyone loudly when she arrived. Her hair was swept up in an elaborate style that had clearly required professional help. She looked like money. She looked like success. She looked nothing like me. More water, ma'am? A young server appeared at my elbow. Yes, thank you, sweetheart. I smiled at him. He couldn't have been more than 22, 23. Working his way through school, probably. I knew that hustle. I'd lived it. At the head table, Devin stood up, champagne glass in hand. He was a handsome man. I'd give him that. Tall, well-built, with the kind of confident bearing that came from being born into the right family. His grandfather had owned 3 funeral homes during segregation when Black folks couldn't be buried by white establishments. His father had turned that into a property empire. Devin had the luxury of calling himself an entrepreneur while building on a foundation others had poured. If I could have everyone's attention, Devin called out, his voice carrying easily across the room. The chatter died down. We're here tonight to celebrate my beautiful wife's 35th birthday. Jasmine, baby, come stand with me. Jasmine rose gracefully, her smile radiant. I felt something twist in my chest. She was beautiful. She was my daughter, and she was about to break my heart. 35 years ago, Devin continued, his arm around Jasmine's waist. The world got a gift. A woman who embodies grace, ambition, and excellence. A woman who taught me that success isn't just about where you come from. Jasmine interrupted, her voice clear and carrying. It's about where you're going. Laughter rippled through the room, knowing laughter. That's right, Devin agreed, kissing her temple. It's about vision. It's about refusing to be limited by circumstances. It's about elevation. Jasmine took the microphone from him. This wasn't planned, I could tell. Devon's smile flickered with surprise. "Thank you all for being here," Jasmine said. Her eyes swept the room, landing on faces, acknowledging friends. They skipped right over me. "You know, birthdays make you reflective. They make you think about your journey." Here it comes, I thought. I could feel it building. "I grew up in a little brick house in West Side Atlanta," Jasmine continued. "My mama worked as a janitor at Georgia Tech. Night shift. I remember being a little girl, watching her leave for work in her uniform, coming home smelling like pine sol and tired. Some people at the nearby tables turned to look at me. I kept my face neutral, my hands folded in my lap. And I remember thinking even as a child that I wanted more, not because I wasn't grateful," she glanced at me finally, "but because I could see there was a bigger world out there. A world where you didn't have to scrub other people's floors to survive." The room had gone very quiet. "My mama," Jasmine said, and her voice took on a particular tone. Not quite cruel, but edged with something sharp. "She's still at that bus stop, still waiting for her life to arrive. Still in that same house, living that same small life. My friend Simone Turner." No wait, Simone wasn't my friend. Simone was Jasmine's business partner, her maid of honor, her constant companion. Simone was nodding along, her expression sympathetic. "But I got on that bus," Jasmine continued. "I rode it as far as it would take me, then I got off and found a better vehicle. And now," she gestured around the room, at the crystal, the flowers, the well-dressed crowd. "Now I'm at my destination." She looked directly at me. "Mama, I love you, but you're still at the bus stop. And I'm sorry, but I can't keep going back there to wait with you." The silence was deafening. 43 people. I counted them later. 43 witnesses to my public dismissal. Devon's face had gone carefully blank. A few people looked uncomfortable, but most just looked at me with pity, the same way you'd look at someone's embarrassing relative who didn't know how to act in polite company. I smiled. I folded my napkin precisely, the way my grandmother taught me. Corners meeting corners, crease sharp as a blade. I stood up, smoothed my dress, picked up my purse, and without a single word, I walked out of the Peacock Room, through the mahogany doors, past the hostess stand, and into the warm Atlanta night. Behind me, I heard the party resume. Laughter, clinking glasses, music starting up again. They'd already forgotten me. That was fine. In 72 hours, they wouldn't be able to forget anything. My 2008 Honda Civic was parked in the lot behind the building, exactly where I always parked it. Silver, 4 doors, manual windows, a tape deck that still worked if you jiggled it right. 247,000 miles on the odometer. I'd bought it used in 2009 for $6,500 cash. Jasmine had begged me to get rid of it. "Mama, that car is embarrassing. What if it breaks down? What will people think?" "It runs fine," I'd told her. "Paid for is paid for." What I hadn't told her was that I also owned a 2022 Mercedes S-Class, currently sitting in a private garage in Buckhead, registered to one of my LLCs. I drove it sometimes, late at night, when I wanted to feel the leather and smell that new car smell. But mostly I drove my Civic. It made me invisible. It made people underestimate me. And being underestimated was my greatest asset. I sat in the car for a moment before starting the engine, watching the restaurant in my rearview mirror. Through the tall windows, I could see the party continuing. Jasmine was dancing now, Devon's arms around her, her head thrown back in laughter. The radio crackled to life when I turned the key. I kept it on the old school station that played Motown and classic soul. Aretha Franklin's Respect poured through the speakers. I had to laugh at that. The universe had a sense of humor. RESPECT. Find out what it means to me. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed west, toward my neighborhood. The streets got quieter as I drove, the gleaming high-rises of downtown giving way to the older, more modest areas. Past the gentrification line, past the coffee shops and boutiques, into the Atlanta that tourists didn't see. A red light stopped me at the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and North Side. While I waited, I looked up at the billboard towering above the gas station on the corner. It was new, gone up maybe 2 months ago. Montgomery Development. Building tomorrow's Atlanta. Devon's face smiled down at me, confident and handsome in his hard hat and suit. The billboard advertised his latest project, luxury condos in the old Fourth Ward, starting at $450,000. What the billboard didn't say was that the project was funded by a $2.1 million investment from PH Holdings, LLC. What it didn't say was that PH Holdings was wholly owned by Peachtree Holdings. What it didn't say was that I was Peachtree Holdings. My daughter's husband had built his reputation on my money, and neither of them knew it. The light turned green. I drove on. My house sat on Lyndhurst Drive, a quiet street lined with oak trees that were older than me. It was a small brick ranch built in 1967 with a carport on the side and a chain-link fence around the backyard. 1,200 square feet. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A front porch where I kept my rocking chair and my plants. I'd bought it in 1989 for $42,000, 2 years after Jasmine was born. It was all I could afford as a single mother working nights at Georgia Tech, cleaning lavatories and classrooms while the rest of the world slept. The house was worth maybe $180,000 now, in this market. Modest, unremarkable. The kind of house that confirmed everything Jasmine believed about my small, limited life. She had no idea that I owned 17 other properties in Atlanta. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. The living room with its floral sofa and my grandmother's quilts hanging on the walls. The kitchen with the yellow Formica counters I'd installed myself 20 years ago. The hallway lined with photos. Jasmine's school pictures, her college graduation, her wedding. I kicked off my shoes and set my purse on the table. Then I walked to my bedroom. The bedroom was simple. A queen bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser, a nightstand. But in the corner, under the window, sat my desk. It was my grandmother's old secretary desk, walnut wood, with a fold-down writing surface and small drawers filled with my record keeping. I lit the candle on the desk, a ritual my grandmother taught me. When you do your accounts, she used to say, you light a candle for clarity. You need to see the truth clearly, baby girl. Numbers don't lie. The laptop was newer than everything else in the room. A Dell bought 3 years ago, encrypted to within an inch of its life. I opened it and entered my password. A string of 24 characters that included my grandmother's birthday, my mother's middle name, and the address of the first property I ever bought. The desktop loaded. One folder sat in the center of the screen. I opened it. Inside were subfolders organized with the precision I'd learned from Professor Gerald Hartman 25 years ago. Bank statements, property deeds, LLC formation documents, trust agreements, lease contracts, investment portfolios. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Hayes, my attorney. Patricia, are you okay? I saw Jasmine's Instagram story. She posted the speech. Patricia, when you're ready, I'm ready. I didn't respond yet. Instead, I opened my main bank account, the one Jasmine didn't know existed. Wells Fargo Business Checking, Peachtree Holdings, LLC, current balance, $4,287,394.62. Then my investment account, Vanguard Total Market Index, current value, $8,943,221.18. Then my real estate spreadsheet, where I tracked every property, its purchase price, current value, rental income, and associated costs. Property address, purchase date, purchase price, current value, monthly income, 1,247 Lyndhurst Drive, June 12, 1989, $42,000, $180,000, N/A, personal, 847 Memorial Drive, March 15, 1999, $45,000, $385,000, 2,416 Hosea Williams Drive, November 8, 2003, $67,000, $425,000, 2,847 Campbellton Road, February 22, 2008, $38,000, $195,000, 1,600. 17 properties total. Purchased for $1,247,000. Current value, $6,832,000. Total net worth, $20,062,615. 20,062,615.80. Built by a woman he scrubbed floors for 23 years. I sat back in my chair and looked at the numbers. They were real. They were mine. And they were about to become very, very important. My grandmother was enslaved in South Carolina. Born in 1901, died in 1994, 93 years of life that spanned from sharecropping to seeing a black man become mayor of Atlanta. My mother picked cotton as a child, then worked as a domestic servant in white people's homes until she was too old to clean anymore. I cleaned laboratories where students younger than my daughter learned to build the future, while I remained invisible. But invisible meant I could move unseen. Invisible meant I could build an empire one brick at a time, and nobody noticed because nobody was looking at the black woman pushing a mop bucket. I pulled out my leather journal, the one I'd kept since Professor Hartman first taught me about compound interest in real estate trusts. The pages were filled with my handwriting. Calculations, plans, dreams written in ink. On a fresh page I wrote the date, November 8th, 2024. Then I wrote, Phoenix Protocol, activated. I picked up my phone and texted Patricia back. Me, I'm ready. Can you meet tomorrow morning? 8 a.m.? Patricia, I'll have the coffee ready. Me, start with the car. We begin with the Range Rover. Patricia, understood. Lorraine, are you sure? Me, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I set the phone down and stared at the candle flame. It flickered in the quiet of my bedroom, steady and persistent. Jasmine thought I was still at the bus stop. Tomorrow, she'd learn that I owned the bus company. 25 years earlier, I was 37 years old, working the night shift at Georgia Tech. My job started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday, while my 12-year-old daughter slept in the care of my mother. I cleaned the College of Engineering. The pay was $8.75 an hour. With overtime, I could clear about $24,000 a year before taxes. I was invisible. The students rushed past me in the hallways, earbuds in, backpacks heavy with textbooks and laptops. The professors nodded absently if they noticed me at all. I was part of the infrastructure, like the fluorescent lights of the trash cans. But I noticed everything. I noticed the textbooks students left behind in their hurry. $200 books, barely used, tossed in the trash because a new edition had come out. I collected them, took them home, read them cover to cover while Jasmine did her homework at the kitchen table. That's how I discovered the book that changed my life. Real Estate Investment Trusts, a comprehensive guide. It was sitting on top of a trash can in the hallway outside Professor Gerald Hartman's office. The spine was barely cracked. Someone had bought it, maybe opened it once and discarded it. I pulled it out and flipped through it. Words jumped out at me. Depreciation, cash flow, leverage, equity, passive income. I took it home. For 3 months I read that book every single night after my shift. I read it while Jasmine ate breakfast before school. I read it on my breaks, sitting in the staff room with my lunch. I read it until the pages were soft and the corners dog-eared. I didn't understand everything at first, but I kept reading. I took notes. I looked up words I didn't know at the library. And slowly, very slowly, I began to see a path. One night in December I was cleaning Professor Hartman's office when he walked in. It was 2 a.m., which was unusual. Most professors were long gone by then. "Oh," he said, startled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." "No interruption, sir," I said, moving my cart toward the door. "I'm almost finished." He was an older white man, maybe early 60s, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'd seen him around campus but had never spoken to him directly. His eyes fell on my cart, where I'd set the real estate book while I worked. "You're reading Stevenson's Read Guide?" he asked, surprised. I felt my face heat with embarrassment. He probably thought I'd stolen it. "Yes, sir. I found it in the hallway trash. I can return it if—" No, he interrupted, waving his hand. "I'm just surprised. That's graduate-level material. Are you taking classes?" "No, sir. I like to read." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "Have you understood it?" The question wasn't condescending. It was genuine. "Some of it," I admitted. "The concepts about leverage and cash flow make sense. The tax parts confuse me." Professor Hartman smiled. "The tax parts confuse most of my MBA students, too. Would you like some help?" That night was the first of many. 3 times a week, when Professor Hartman worked late, he would spend an hour teaching me. Not formally, just conversations while I cleaned his office. He'd explain concepts, draw diagrams on his whiteboard, quiz me on terminology. "You're smarter than half my MBA students," he told me one night, 6 months into our informal education. You have something they don't. What's that? I asked. Hunger. You want this knowledge because you need it, not because it's a credential. That makes all the difference. He taught me about corporations and LLCs, about how the wealthy structured their assets to minimize taxes and maximize protection, about how real estate could generate both cash flow and long-term wealth, about the power of delayed gratification and compound interest. The key, he said, is to build something they can't see coming. Don't announce your moves. Don't show your hand. Just quietly, methodically build. In 2002, Professor Hartman died of a heart attack in his office. He was 71 years old. He had no children, no close family. His estate was modest. He'd spent his life teaching, not accumulating wealth. At the reading of his will, I received a letter and a check for $200,000. The letter said, "Lorraine, you were the best student I ever had, not because you had the highest test scores, but because you understood what knowledge was for. It's a tool for building a better life. Use this money to build something lasting. Don't just survive. Thrive. And when you've made it, help someone else climb. That's how we honor those who helped us." Gerald. $200,000. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I cried for 3 days. Then I went to work. Before I tell you how I took it all away, you need to understand how I built it in the first place. That $200,000 from Professor Hartman sat in my checking account for exactly 2 weeks while I did my homework. Not the kind of homework Jasmine brought home from school, the kind that would determine our future. I studied every foreclosure listing in Atlanta. I drove through neighborhoods on my days off, noting which areas had good bones, but bad luck. I talked to other custodians at Georgia Tech who'd lived in Atlanta their whole lives, learning which neighborhoods were about to turn around. And on June 12, 1999, I bought my first investment property. 847 Memorial Drive, East Atlanta. It was a duplex. Brick, 2 units, built in 1952. The previous owner had died, and his children wanted nothing to do with it. It needed work, new roof, updated plumbing, electrical that hadn't been touched since Carter was president. Purchase price, $45,000. I used $50,000 of Professor Hartman's money, $45,000 for the house, $5,000 for immediate repairs. I did a lot of the cosmetic work myself, watching YouTube videos at the library, learning how to install tile and fix drywall. I lived in one unit with Jasmine. I rented out the other for $650 a month. Jasmine was 12 years old. She hated it. "Mama, why do we have to be landlords?" she complained, lying on her bed in our new duplex while I painted her room. "That's white people stuff. My friends are gonna think we're trying to be white." "Baby, money doesn't have a color," I told her. "And neither does building a future." "But you're a janitor," she said. And even at 12, there was that edge in her voice. That shame. "What do you know about real estate?" I didn't tell her about Professor Hartman. I didn't tell her about the late-night lessons or the $200,000 or the plan I had. I just said, I know enough. By 2003, I owned 3 properties. The duplex on Memorial Drive, and 2 more foreclosures I'd bought with cash-out refinances and strategic timing. 1632 Hosea Williams Drive, purchased November 8, 2003 for $67,000. 2847 Campbellton Road, purchased February 22, 2003 for $52,000. Combined rental income, $3,850 per month. That was when Jasmine started at Spelman College. She was 17, brilliant, beautiful, and deeply ashamed of where she came from. "I want to transfer to NYU," she told me during her freshman year. "Spelman is fine, but NYU has better connections, better networking, better everything." "Baby, Spelman is a good school," I said. "And it's paid for with your scholarships and the Georgia Hope program. NYU would be $60,000 a year." "So?" She looked at me with those eyes. My eyes, but harder. "Other parents figure it out." "I can't afford it, Jasmine." That was a lie. I could have written a check for all 4 years of NYU without touching my principal. But she needed to be hungry. My mother used to say, "A full belly makes a soft mind." I was raising my daughter to be strong, not soft. "Of course you can't," she said, and the bitterness in her voice cut me. "You're just a janitor." The 2008 financial crisis was a gift from God for people who understood real estate. While the rest of the world panicked, I watched the foreclosure listings like a hawk. Properties that had sold for $200,000 were going for $40,000, $50,000, $30,000. Entire neighborhoods were underwater. I had liquidity. I had good credit. And I had been waiting for exactly this moment. Between 2008 and 2011, I bought 7 properties. 2,847 Campbellton Road, $38,000. February 2008. 1,584 Dill Avenue, $43,000. June 2008. 923 Welch Street, $41,000. September 2008. 2,156 Briar Glen Lane, $56,000. March 2009. 487 Holderness Street, $33,000. August 2009. 1,247 Martin Street, $47,000. January 2010. 3,391 Dale Lane, $52,000. November 2010. Total investment, $310,000. Current value, 2024, $2,847,000. I set them all up under different LLCs. Peachtree Holdings was the umbrella, but each property was held by a subsidiary with a different name. Oakwood Properties, PH Real Estate Trust, Atlanta Investment Group. Why? Because Professor Hartman taught me. The wealthy don't put all their assets in one basket. They structure, they separate, they protect. Jasmine graduated from Spelman in 2012 with a degree in business administration. She had no job prospects, no real plan, and a lot of anger about what she saw as wasted potential. Then she met Devin Montgomery at a networking event for young Black professionals. Devin was everything I wasn't. Old money, educated at Morehouse and then Harvard Business School. Family with connections going back 3 generations. A last name that opened doors. He was also, I could tell within 5 minutes of meeting him, a good man. Kind, genuine. Not pretending to be something he wasn't. The problem was Jasmine was pretending. And I'd let her. They dated for 3 years. In 2015, they got married at the Biltmore Ballroom. 350 guests. A 12-piece band. Flowers imported from Ecuador. An 8-tier cake. Devin's family paid for everything. I offered to contribute. Jasmine, let me help with the wedding. It's tradition for the bride's family. Mama, no. She cut me off, her voice sharp. Devin's family is handling everything. We don't need charity. It's not charity. I'm your mother. Then act like you're proud of me instead of embarrassing me. I went to that wedding and sat in the 4th row. Not the front. Not with the important family. The 4th row, like a distant cousin. I wore a dress from Macy's. I smiled. I took pictures. And I wrote them a check for $10,000 as a wedding gift. Jasmine deposited it and never mentioned it again. What Jasmine didn't know, what Devin didn't know, was that I'd been helping them long before they ever asked. In 2016, Devin came to me. Not for money directly, but for advice. Ms. Washington, he said, sitting in my living room with that earnest expression. I'm starting a development company. I want to build affordable housing in underserved communities. But I'm having trouble finding investors who believe in the mission more than the profit margin. How much do you need? I asked. For the first project? About $500,000. But I don't want to ask my father. I want to do this on my own. 3 days later, Devin received a call from a company called PH Holdings LLC. They wanted to invest $500,000 in his project. Silent partner. No control. Just capital and a small return. Devin thought he'd been discovered by some forward-thinking investment group. He had been. He just didn't know the investment group was his wife's mother. By 2024, here's what I owned that they didn't know about. Devin's business. PH Holdings had invested $2,147,000 in Montgomery development over 8 years. This represented 60% of his total capital. Every major project he'd completed had my money in it. His silent investor was his mother-in-law Jasmine's boutique. Simone and Jasmine received a $75,000 small business grant in 2020. The grant came from Peachtree Small Business Initiative, which was me. The boutique space at 2847 Peachtree Road, I bought that building in 2019 for $385,000. Their lease was $1 per year, buried in legal language, promotional community partnership. The Range Rover leased through BHPH Auto Trust, which stood for Better Homes Property Holdings, which was another one of my LLC's monthly payment. $1, 247 asterisk, paid by Montgomery Development Corporate Account, asterisk, which was funded by PH Holdings asterisk, which was me the house asterisk, that beautiful Buckhead mansion at 2156 Habersham Road. Devin bought the house in 2018 for $875,000 asterisk, but he didn't buy the land asterisk. The land was on a 99-year lease from Oakwood Properties, LLC asterisk, lease payment, $1 per year asterisk, owner of Oakwood Properties, Lorraine Elizabeth Washington. Everything they had, everything they believed they'd built, sat on a foundation I'd poured. And they'd called me small. Now they were going to learn what happens when you build on sand you don't own. Patricia Hayes met me at her office at 8 a.m. sharp. Her office was on this 23rd floor of the One Atlantic Center building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. Patricia was 55, a Howard Law graduate who'd built her practice representing women in complex asset protection cases. She was the only person besides me who knew the full extent of what I'd built. "Lorraine," she said, handing me coffee in a real ceramic mug, not the disposable kind. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind. This will destroy her world." "I know. I built that world." Patricia sat down across from me. "Walk me through it one more time. I need to hear you say it." "Devin has a meeting at First National Bank this morning at 10 a.m., I said. "He's applying for a $2 million construction loan for his West End project, the affordable housing development." "The one that's actually a good project," Patricia noted. "Yes, the one that's actually a good project." I took a sip of coffee. His application looks strong. He has $300,000 in liquid capital, plus a commitment letter from his primary investor for $1.5 million. PH Holdings. PH Holdings. Except this morning at 9 a.m., PH Holdings is withdrawing that commitment. Patricia pulled up a document on her computer and turned the screen toward me. "This is the withdrawal letter. It's legal, clean, and gives no explanation beyond change in investment strategy." "Are you sure?" I looked at the letter. At the top was Devin's name. At the bottom was my signature, not as Lorraine Washington but as L.E. Washington, Managing Director, PH Holdings, LLC. "I'm sure. Send it." Patricia clicked the mouse. "Sent. It'll hit the bank system in approximately 15 minutes. At 11:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized. "Devin. Ms. Washington, this is Devin Montgomery. I hope this isn't an imposition, but I wonder if I could ask your advice about something. Could I come by sometime this week?" I stared at the text. He'd never texted me before. Never called me unless Jasmine made him. Never asked my advice about anything. Now his world was cracking, and he was reaching out. I didn't respond. Not yet. From what I learned later, here's what happened at that bank. Devin sat across from Bernard Wilson, the senior loan officer he'd worked with for 5 years. Bernard had that uncomfortable look people get when they have to deliver bad news to someone they like. "Devin, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Your anchor investor, PH Holdings, withdrew their commitment this morning." Devin's face went blank. "That's impossible. I spoke with them 2 weeks ago. Everything was confirmed." "I have the withdrawal letter right here." Bernard slid a paper across the desk. "Arrived at 9:14 this morning. They've pulled the entire $1.5 million commitment." "Why? Did they give a reason?" "Change in investment strategy. That's all it says." Devin picked up the letter, reading it 3 times like the words might rearrange themselves into something different. "Bernard, I've been working with PH Holdings for 8 years. They've never pulled out of a project. Not once." "I understand, but without that anchor investment, your loan application doesn't meet our lending criteria. Your personal capital of $300,000 doesn't support a $2 million loan." "What if I get another investor? I can find someone else. That would require a whole new application process. 4 to 6 weeks minimum." Devin sat back in his chair. "I have contractors scheduled to break ground in 3 weeks. I have purchase agreements on the land. If I delay, I lose the deals." Bernard's face was sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Devin. Without that investment, there's nothing I can do. That night, Devin told Jasmine over dinner. I know this because Devin told me later during our final conversation. He said Jasmine's response was, "Baby, your family has money. Just ask your dad." And Devin, proud Devin, good Devin, said, "I wanted to do this without them. I wanted to prove I could build something on my own." Jasmine's response, "Well, that's the difference between us. I didn't have family money to fall back on. I had to make it happen myself." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The boutique Simone and Jasmine was located at 2847 Peachtree Road, in the heart of Buckhead's shopping district. High-end neighborhood, wealthy clientele, perfect location. The space was 1,800 square feet, with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and enough room for their curated collection of clothing from Black designers. At 9 a.m. on Tuesday, November 12, 2024, a courier delivered an envelope to the boutique. Jasmine was there alone, arranging a new shipment of handbags. She signed for the envelope, assuming it was a vendor contract or invoice. Instead, it was a lease termination notice. To Simone Turner and Jasmine Montgomery, doing business as Simone and Jasmine Boutique. From Peachtree Commercial Properties, LLC, Property Management Agent. Commercial lease at 2847 Peachtree Road, NE, Suite 104, Atlanta, GA 30305. Date November 12, 2024. Dear Ms. Turner and Mrs. Montgomery, this letter serves as official notice that your commercial lease agreement dated January 15, 2020, will be terminated effective December 12, 2024, pursuant to Section 14C of your lease agreement. Owner's right to renovate. The building owner has elected to undertake comprehensive renovations of the property, requiring all current tenants to vacate. Per Section 14C, the owner may exercise this right with 30 days written notice. Your prorated rent refund for December, $147.00, will be processed within 14 business days. Please arrange to remove all inventory, fixtures, and personal property by 5 p.m. on December 12, 2024. Any items remaining after this date would be considered abandoned. Thank you for your tenancy. Sincerely, Margaret Chen, Property Manager, Peachtree Commercial Properties, LLC. Jasmine read it 3 times. Then she called the property management company. This is Jasmine Montgomery from Simone and Jasmine Boutique. I just received a lease termination notice. There must be some mistake. Margaret Chen's voice was professional, neutral. No mistake, Mrs. Montgomery. The building owner is exercising their right to renovate. But we have a year left on our lease. You can't just kick us out. Your lease includes an owner's right clause, Section 14C. The owner can terminate with 30 days notice for renovation purposes. It's all legal, Mrs. Montgomery. Who is the building owner? I want to speak with them directly. The building is owned by Peachtree Holdings, LLC. They're a private investment company. All communications go through our office. This is insane. We've been perfect tenants. We've never missed a payment. You've never made a payment, Mrs. Montgomery. Silence. What? Your lease is structured as a community partnership grant. Your annual rent is $1, paid at signing. You haven't made monthly payments because your lease doesn't require them. Jasmine felt something cold settle in her stomach. I thought we got a small business grant for the startup costs. You did, from Peachtree Small Business Initiative. But the rent structure is separate. Regardless, the termination stands. I'm sorry. Jasmine called Simone, her business partner and best friend since college. Simone, we have a problem. Simone Turner arrived at the boutique 20 minutes later, her designer heels clicking on the polished concrete floors. She was 34, beautiful, always perfectly put together. She and Jasmine had been inseparable since freshman year at Spelman. What's going on? Simone asked. Jasmine handed her the letter. Simone read it, her perfectly shaped eyebrows drawing together. This has to be illegal. It's not. I called. We signed a lease with an owner's right clause. But who would do this? We're doing well. Our sales are up 23% from last year. We're not a liability. I don't know. Jasmine sank into one of the velvet chairs they used for customers trying on shoes. But it's the same name. Peachtree. What? Devin's investor, the one who pulled out yesterday, PH Holdings. And this building is owned by Peachtree Holdings. Simone's eyes widened. You think they're the same company? I don't know. Maybe. It seems like too much of a coincidence. Girl, you think someone's targeting you? Like targeting your family specifically? Jasmine looked up at her friend. Who would do that? We're nobody. We don't have enemies. You're married to Devin Montgomery. Rival developers? Someone who wants to take him down? For the first time, Jasmine felt real fear. This wasn't just bad luck. This was coordinated. I need to tell Devin, she said. At 6:47 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Jasmine was awakened by the sound of a diesel engine in the driveway. She rolled over, disoriented. Devin's side of the bed was empty. He was already up, probably in his home office trying to find a new investor. The engine sound grew louder, closer. She got out of bed, pulled on her robe, and walked to the bedroom window. A tow truck was backing into their circular driveway. A large yellow tow truck with Atlanta Auto Recovery printed on the side. It was positioning itself behind her Range Rover. What the hell? Jasmine ran downstairs, her bare feet slapping against the marble floors. She threw open the front door just as a man in greasy coveralls was attaching chains to her vehicle. Excuse me, what are you doing? The man looked up. He was about 50, weathered face, completely unbothered by her distress. You Jasmine Montgomery? Yes, and that's my car. Not anymore, ma'am. Repossession order. He held up a clipboard. That's impossible. Our payments are current. According to BHPH Auto Trust, you're 3 months behind. Vehicles being recovered. BHPH? Our lease is through Montgomery Development's corporate account. The man shrugged. Lady, I just hook 'em up. You got questions, call this number. He handed her a business card. Jasmine looked at the card. BHPH Auto Trust, Asset Recovery Division. Wait, please, let me call my husband. This is a mistake. I've heard that 5 times already this morning. Always a mistake until they check their paperwork. The man activated the lift. The front wheels of her Range Rover rose slowly off the ground. Jasmine's phone was inside. She ran back into the house, her hands shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. She called Devin. Devin, there's a tow truck taking my car. What? In our driveway right now. He says it's being repossessed for non-payment. She heard him moving, chair scraping. That's impossible. The lease is paid through the company account. Let me call Sam. Sam Blake was the CFO of Montgomery Development. Jasmine went back outside. The tow truck driver was securing the Range Rover, unbothered by her presence. How much do I owe? I'll pay it right now. Doesn't work like that, ma'am. Vehicle's being recovered. If you want it back, you contact BHPH and arrange payment. Otherwise, it goes to auction in 14 days. 14 days? Her phone rang. Devin. Jazz, we have a bigger problem. What could be bigger than my car being stolen from our driveway? Sam just called. The bank froze our operating account. The world seemed to tilt. What? First National froze Montgomery Development's main operating account. They're saying there's a fraud investigation. Fraud? Devin, what the hell is happening? The tow truck driver climbed into his cab. The engine roared to life. Jasmine watched her Range Rover, the car she'd posted on Instagram 53 times, the car that announced she'd arrived, being dragged backward down her driveway. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Patterson from across the street. The Johnsons 2 doors down. All of them witnessing the public dismantling of the perfect life Jasmine Montgomery had so carefully constructed. The tow truck turned onto the street and drove away. Jasmine stood in her driveway in her bathrobe and bare feet, crying. Devin called an emergency meeting with his lawyer, his accountant, and Sam Blake. The conference call lasted 2 hours. Here's what they discovered. The bank freeze. First National had received an anonymous tip about potential fraud in Montgomery Development's investor documentation, specifically, questions about the legitimacy of PH Holdings, LLC. The bank was required by federal law to freeze accounts pending investigation. Timeline: 48 to 72 hours minimum. During the freeze, no payroll, no vendor payments, no operating capital, the auto lease. The Range Rover was not leased through Montgomery Development. It was leased through BHPH Auto Trust. Montgomery Development made payments to BHPH. But BHPH was the actual leaseholder. BHPH had the right to repossess for any reason with 24 hours notice per the contract. The boutique, Peachtree Holdings, LLC, owned the building. Corporate records showed it was a Delaware LLC registered agent. Hayes & Associates Law Firm, Atlanta. No public information about ownership. Completely legal, completely anonymous. Devin sat in his home office staring at the documents spread across his desk. Everything connected back to companies he couldn't trace. Companies with similar names, companies that seemed to be everywhere in his life, but nowhere he could see. His phone rang. His father, Charles Montgomery. "Son, I heard about the bank freeze. Your mother's worried." "I'm handling it, Dad. This is what happens when you work with anonymous investors. I told you to stick with people we know." "Dad, I don't need a lecture right now." "You need help. Let me write you a bridge loan, $500,000. Get you through until—" "No." Devin's pride, that Montgomery pride, wouldn't let him. "I can handle this." "You're just like your mother. Too proud to ask for help until it's too late." After he hung up, Devin sat in the silence of his expensive home office, surrounded by evidence of a success that was crumbling, and asked himself the question he should have asked years ago. Who was really funding his life? At 2:17 p.m. on Friday afternoon, a city inspector arrived at 2156 Haversham Road. Jasmine answered the door, surprised. "Can I help you?" "City of Atlanta Building Inspection. I'm here about your foundation." "Our foundation? We didn't request an inspection." The inspector, a tired-looking man in his 50s carrying a clipboard, checked his paperwork. "Says here the property owner requested an emergency structural assessment. Are you the owner?" "My husband owns the house. And you are?" "Jasmine Montgomery." The inspector checked his clipboard again. "Huh. I've got the owner listed as Oakwood Properties, LLC. You're the tenant?" "No, we own this house. We bought it in 2018. "Ma'am, I don't know what to tell you. My work order is from Oakwood Properties, says they own the land and want the structure inspected. Can I come in?" Jasmine let him in because she didn't know what else to do. For the next 45 minutes, the inspector examined their basement, took photos, made notes, and hummed in a way that suggested nothing good. Finally, he came back upstairs to where Jasmine and Devin were waiting. "You've got settling," he said simply. "Foundation is sinking on the northeast corner. Not dangerous yet, but it will be if you don't address it." "How much to fix it?" Devin asked. "You're looking at $50,000 to $75,000, maybe more depending on what we find when we start digging. And you need to do it in the next 30 days, or I'll have to post the house as structurally unsound." After he left, Jasmine and Devin sat in their living room, their $875,000 living room in their dream house, and looked at each other. "We don't have $50,000, Jasmine said quietly. "I know. The bank accounts are frozen." "I know. My car is gone." "I know. My business is being shut down." "I know." Silence. Then Jasmine said the thing they'd both been thinking. "Someone is doing this to us." Saturday morning, Devin woke up at 5:47 a.m., not because of an alarm, but because he couldn't sleep. He'd spent all of Friday night in his office, going through every document related to his business. Bank statements, investment agreements, lease contracts, property deeds, and he'd found something. At 7:30 a.m., he woke Jasmine. "Jazz, we need to talk now." She sat up, her silk bonnet askew, eyes puffy from crying herself to sleep. "What is it?" "I found something. Look at this." He handed her a document, the property deed for their house. She read it, confused. "I don't understand. What am I looking at?" "Look at the ownership structure. We don't own the land. We have a 99-year lease." "What? That doesn't make sense. You bought this house in 2018. I bought the house, the structure. But the land is leased from Oakwood Properties, LLC. Jasmine stared at the document. "Oakwood. Another company we can't trace." Devin pulled up his laptop, showing her a spreadsheet he'd created overnight. "Look, PH Holdings, my main investor. BHPH Auto Trust, the car lease company. Peachtree Holdings, owns your boutique building. Peachtree Small Business Initiative, gave you the grant. Oakwood Properties, owns our land." Okay, so someone has a lot of companies. Jazz, look at the pattern. They're all registered in Delaware. They all use Hayes and Associates as their registered agent. They all have the same corporate structure. She looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You think it's the same person? One person owns all of these?" "I think it's one entity, yes. And I think they've been controlling our entire life." "But who? Who would have this much money and this much interest in controlling us?" Devin sat on the edge of the bed, his voice quiet. Someone who has the resources. Someone who never approved of you. Someone who might want to prove you're a gold digger. Jasmine's eyes widened. Your father? At 10 a.m., they arrived at the Montgomery family estate in historic Cascade Heights. The house was a beautiful Tudor-style mansion, built in 1947, sitting on 2 acres of perfectly manicured lawn. This was where Devon had grown up, where 3 generations of Montgomerys had built their legacy. Charles Montgomery answered the door himself. At 65, he was still imposing, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded rooms. His wife Eleanor stood behind him, elegant in a cream cashmere sweater. Devon, Jasmine, Charles said, surprised. We weren't expecting you. We need to talk, Dad. Now. They moved to Charles's study, a room lined with law books and family photos spanning decades. What's this about, son? Devon stood, too agitated to sit. Jasmine remained by the door, her arms crossed. I know it was you, Devon said. All of it. The investment withdrawal, the bank freeze, the repossession, the boutique closure, the foundation issue, all of it. Charles set down his coffee cup slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Devon's voice rose. Peachtree Holdings, PH Holdings, Oakwood Properties, they're all you, aren't they? You've been controlling my business, my life, everything. Just to prove that Jasmine, Devon. Charles's voice was sharp. I have no idea what you're talking about. What companies? The shell companies. The anonymous LLCs. The ones that have been funding my business for 8 years. Charles stood, his face darkening. Son, I have been asking you for years who your investors were. You always said it's handled and shut me down. How dare you come into my house and accuse me? Eleanor stepped forward, her voice calm. Charles, sit down. Devon explained clearly. What exactly do you think your father has done? Devon pulled out his phone, showing them his spreadsheet. These companies have funded everything in our life. My business, Jasmine's boutique, our car, our house. And now they're all pulling away at once. It's coordinated, it's intentional. And Dad is the only person we know with this kind of money and this kind of— Stop. Charles's voice was ice. Eleanor, get Robert on the phone. Eleanor called their family attorney, Robert Crawford, on speakerphone. Robert, I need you to pull records on all of my business entities. Right now. Charles, at Saturday morning. Now, Robert. My son is accusing me of fraud. 5 minutes of typing sounds over the speaker. All right, Charles. You have 3 active business entities. Montgomery Development? That's Devon's business, which you have no ownership stake in per your agreement. Montgomery Properties. Your rental portfolio, 6 commercial buildings in Southwest Atlanta. And the Montgomery Family Trust, established 1987. That's it. No Delaware LLCs? Nothing called Peachtree or PH Holdings or Oakwood? Nothing. Charles, what's going on? Charles hung up and looked at his son. I have built my reputation over 40 years, Devon. I don't do business in shadows. I don't operate shell companies. And I sure as hell don't sabotage my own son. The room was silent. Jasmine's voice was small. Then who? Eleanor Montgomery walked over to Jasmine. She was 63, elegant, with kind eyes that had seen a lot in her years married to the Montgomery family. Sweetheart, Eleanor said gently, if someone has been helping you, funding your dreams, supporting your life, maybe it's not an enemy. What do you mean? Maybe it's someone who loves you, someone you've been taking for granted. Jasmine's face went pale. Who have you been dismissing? Eleanor pressed. Who have you been ashamed of? Who have you been treating as less than? Oh God. Jasmine's hand went to her mouth. Oh God, no. It can't be. She doesn't have money. She was a janitor. She lives in a tiny house. She drives a 2008 Civic. She can't. But even as she said it, she was remembering things. Her mother never asked for help. Never seemed worried about money. Retired early. Lived simply but never struggled. When's the last time you actually asked about her life? Devon asked quietly. Jasmine started crying. We have to go. We have to go right now. Devon drove. Jasmine sat in the passenger seat of his Mercedes, the one car they still had that hadn't been repossessed, crying so hard she could barely breathe. How could I be so stupid? She gasped between sobs. How could I be so blind? Jazz? No, Devon. Don't try to make me feel better. I called my mother small. I said she was at the bus stop. I said it in front of 43 people. I said it, and she just smiled and left, and I thought I'd won. Devon's hands gripped the steering wheel. If this is true, if your mother has been funding everything, Jazz, I've been taking her money and smiling while you insulted her. She was at our wedding, Devon. Fourth row. Fourth row because I said your family paid for everything, so your family should sit up front. My mother sat in the fourth row at my wedding. When's the last time you called her? Jasmine thought. I don't know. Months? She called me on my birthday, but I was busy with the party planning, so I didn't really talk. She pulled out her phone, looked at her call history. The last call to Mama was August 3rd, 2024, 3 months ago, and it had lasted 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Oh God, Devon, what have I done? They drove through Atlanta, from the elegant streets of Cascade Heights, through downtown, past the gentrified neighborhoods with their coffee shops and boutiques, into the quieter, older parts of the city. Lyndhurst Drive was lined with oak trees, their branches forming a canopy over the street. Small brick houses, well-maintained lawns, the kind of neighborhood where people had lived for 30, 40 years. Devon parked in front of 1247 Lyndhurst Drive. The house looked exactly as Jasmine remembered from childhood. Small, modest. The front porch with its rocking chair. Her mother's plants hanging in baskets. The chain-link fence around the backyard. Nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. Because now Jasmine understood that this house, this small, humble house, might be the visible tip of an empire she'd never known existed. I feel sick, Jasmine Sapp said. Do you want me to go in first? Devon asked. No, I need to face this. I need to face her. They got out of the car and walked up the short driveway. The front door was painted blue, the same blue it had been since Jasmine was 12. The doorbell still played the same chime, but when the door opened, Jasmine saw her mother with new eyes. Lorraine Washington stood in her doorway wearing a simple house dress and an apron. She'd been in her garden, her hands still dirty from repotting her orchids. She didn't look surprised to see them. She didn't look angry. She just looked tired. Mama, Jasmine's voice cracked. Mama, tell me it's not true. What's not true, baby? Tell me you didn't. That you're not. Peachtree Holdings. PH Holdings. All of it. Lorraine looked at her daughter, then at Devon, then back at Jasmine. Come inside, she said quietly. I'll make some tea. The kitchen was exactly as Jasmine remembered. Yellow Formica counters, the same table and chairs from her childhood, the smell of lemon and old coffee. Lorraine put the kettle on, then went to her bedroom. She came back carrying her laptop and a leather journal. She set them on the kitchen table. Sit down, she said. They sat. Lorraine opened the laptop, turned it to face them, and pulled up a spreadsheet. Peachtree Holdings, LLC, Asset Summary. As of November 16, 2024, Asset Category Current Value, Real Estate Portfolio, $6,832,000. Investment Accounts, $8,943,221. Cash and Equivalents, $4,287,395. Total Net Worth, $20,062,616. Jasmine stared at the numbers. They didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. Mama, what is this? That's what I built, Lorraine said simply. Over 25 years, starting with $200,000 from a professor who believed in me when no one else did. Devon spoke for the first time. Miss Washington, the companies, PH Holdings, Oakwood Properties. Those are yours? Yes. And you funded my business? Lorraine pulled up another document. Devon's investment history. Montgomery Development, Investor Summary, Investor, PH Holdings, LLC. Date investment amount, Project March 2016, $500,000, East Point Mixed Use, June 2017, $325,000, College Park Renovation, January 2019, $487,000, Mechanicsville Housing, September 2024, $112,000. West End Commons, March 2022, $423,000. Historic Fourth Ward, total, $2,147,000. Every project you built, Lorraine said, I funded 60% of it. You thought you had this mysterious investor group who believed in your vision. Devin, I was that investor. I believed in your vision because you're a good man with a good heart who wants to help people. Devin's eyes filled with tears. But why didn't you tell me? Because if I'd told you, would Jasmine have loved you? Or would she have thought you were just another handout from her poor, struggling mother? The words hit like a slap. Lorraine turned to Jasmine. Your boutique. The grant you thought you earned? She pulled up another document. Peachtree Small Business Initiative. Grant Award, January 15, 2020. Recipient, Jasmine Montgomery and Simone Turner. Amount $75,000. I gave you that money, Lorraine said. And the building at 2847 Peachtree Road? I bought it in 2019 for $385,000. Your lease was $1 a year. $1, Jasmine, for prime Buckhead retail space. Mama, I don't understand. And this house. Lorraine pulled out the property deed. 2156 Haversham Road. Devin, you paid $875,000 for the structure. But the land is mine. Oakwood Properties, LLC. I structured it as a 99-year lease for $1 annually so you could afford to buy your dream home. Devin put his head in his hands. Even the Range Rover, Lorraine continued. BHPH Auto Trust, Better Homes Property Holdings. Another one of my companies. The lease payments came from your business account, Devin, but the business account was funded by my investments. She opened the leather journal, showing page after page of handwritten notes, calculations, property addresses. I have 17 properties in Atlanta. I started with a duplex on Memorial Drive in 1999. I lived in one unit with Jasmine, rented out the other. She was 12 years old and she told me that being a landlord was white people stuff. Jasmine's face crumpled. Everything you have, Lorraine said, her voice steady but soft. I gave you. But I made you think you earned it because I wanted you to have pride. I wanted you to believe in yourself. Then why take it all away? Jasmine cried. Why destroy everything? Because you called me small. Lorraine's voice rose for the first time, and the pain in it made both of them flinch. Because you stood in front of 43 people, in a restaurant I own, wearing a dress bought with money I helped you earn, holding a champagne glass I paid for, and you told the world I was nothing. You said I was still at the bus stop. Tears were streaming down Lorraine's face now. Do you know what that felt like, Jasmine? To pour everything I had into building you up, making sure you never knew struggle, never knew hunger, never knew fear, and to have you look at me with shame? Jasmine was sobbing. Mama, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Lorraine's hands were shaking. You need to understand. You need to know what it took to build this. What I sacrificed, what I endured. She opened the journal to earlier pages, her handwriting from 20 years ago. March 15, 1999, worked double shift. Jasmine has a school field trip, needs $35. Used tip money from cleaning the engineering building. Bought duplex today with Professor Hartman's money. Jasmine asked why we have to move. I told her it's for our future. She cried. April 3, 2003. Jasmine ashamed to bring friends home. Says our house is embarrassing. Bought second property today. She doesn't know I'm building her inheritance. June 12, 2012. Jasmine graduated Spelman today. She thanked her professors, her friends, her boyfriend Devin. She didn't mention me in her speech. Bought another property, now at 7 total. November 2nd, 2015, Jasmine's wedding. She put me in the 4th row. Devin's family sits up front because they paid for everything. I offered to contribute $50,000. She said no, we didn't need charity. I went to the wedding and watched my only child get married like I was a stranger. Jasmine was doubled over, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Every time you erased me, Lorraine said, I told myself, she'll grow out of it. She'll remember where she came from. She'll remember that I love her. But you didn't. You just kept climbing, kept distancing yourself, kept being ashamed of the woman who gave you everything. Devin spoke, his voice broken. Ms. Washington, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. If I had known, I never would have. You smiled, Devin, Lorraine said gently. When she insulted me, when she dismissed me, when she talked about elevation and leaving the bus stop, you smiled. You didn't stop her. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're a good man, Devin. You truly are. But you let the woman you love treat her mother like trash, and you said nothing. The kitchen was silent except for Jasmine's crying. Finally, Lorraine spoke. "I can give it all back," she said. "The business funding, the house, the boutique, all of it." Jasmine looked up, hope in her eyes. "Really?" "On one condition." "Anything, Mama. Anything." "You work for me, both of you." Devin and Jasmine looked at each other. "Work for you how?" Devin asked. "I need someone to help me manage my properties, collect rent, handle repairs, deal with tenant issues, evict people when they don't pay, do the work I did for 25 years while you lived in comfort." "For how long?" Jasmine asked. 1 year. You live in one of my properties, not the fancy ones. A modest apartment. You take a salary, $35,000 a year each, same as I made starting out. You learn what it means to build something from the ground up." Jasmine's face showed her struggle, pride warring with necessity. "And if we say no?" Devin asked quietly. "Then I sell everything. I donate the money to charity, and you build your life from scratch the way I did." Devin stood up. Jasmine grabbed his hand. "Devin, don't." "Ms. Washington," Devin said, "I'll do it. Let Jasmine keep the boutique, keep her life, I'll work for you." Lorraine studied him. "Why?" "Because I failed you. I failed her. I'm a black man who should have known better. My grandparents built their business when they couldn't drink from the same fountain as white folks. They knew struggle. They knew respect. And I forgot." "Devin, no." Jasmine stood up. "No, I'll do it. It should be me." No." Jasmine turned to her mother. "I'll do it, Mama. I'll work for you. I'll learn. I'll do whatever you need me to do." Lorraine looked at both of them. "Then you'll both do it," she said. Together. 6 months later, Jasmine knelt on the bathroom floor of a duplex at 847 Memorial Drive, the same duplex she'd lived in as a child, replacing a wax ring on a toilet. Her hands were dirty. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, no designer labels in sight. "How's it going?" Devin called from the other room, where he was fixing a leaky faucet. "I think I got it. Hand me that wrench?" They'd been doing this for 6 months now, managing 12 of Lorraine's properties, answering tenant calls at 2 a.m. because a pipe burst, showing apartments to prospective renters, collecting rent checks, fixing broken fixtures, living in a 900-square-foot apartment in East Atlanta, driving the old Honda Civic. Lorraine had given it to them, making $35,000 each per year. It was the hardest 6 months of Jasmine's life. It was also the most important. "Mrs. Crawford just paid her rent," Devin said, coming into the bathroom. "Early. Again." "Mrs. Crawford is a blessing." Jasmine wiped her hands on her jeans. "Did you know she's lived here for 15 years? Your mom gave her a break on rent when her husband died." "I know. Your mom told me the story." They'd started calling Lorraine Mom together. At first it felt awkward for Devin. Now it felt right. Sunday dinners at Lorraine's house had become sacred. The three of them would cook together, Lorraine teaching them her grandmother's recipes, telling stories about their family, about struggle and survival and strength. Last Sunday, Jasmine had asked her mother to teach her to quilt. They'd started a new pattern together, the Phoenix. "You cut away the damaged pieces," Lorraine had explained, "and something beautiful rises from what's left." Sunday afternoon, Jasmine and Lorraine sat on the back porch working on the quilt. Their hands moved in rhythm, needles pulling thread through fabric, creating something new from pieces of the past. "Mama, can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby." "Why did you really do all this? Was it to punish me?" Lorraine set down her needle and looked at her daughter. "When you prune a rose bush, are you punishing it?" "No. You're helping it grow." "I was dying, Jasmine. Every time you looked at me with shame, a piece of me died. I had to do something before there was nothing left." "I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't heal us. Action does. Change does." Jasmine looked at the quilt in her lap. "I want to keep learning. Not just about the properties. I want to learn everything. Your story. Grandma's story. Great-grandma's story." "Then we better start at the beginning," Lorraine said, "because we come from a long line of women who survived what should have killed them." She told Jasmine about her grandmother, born into sharecropping in South Carolina in 1901. About her mother, who picked cotton as a child. About Professor Hartman, who saw potential in a cleaning woman and chose to nurture it. "You're not just my daughter," Lorraine said. You're the result of a generations of women who refuse to break. That's your inheritance, Jasmine. Not money, strength. Jasmine laid her head on her mother's shoulder, the way she used to when she was small. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. I always did. Even when you couldn't see it. 1 year later, Lorraine Washington walked into the restaurant on the arm of her daughter. It was her 63rd birthday party, but this time the guest list was different. Intimate. 20 people instead of 43. Real friends. Real family. Patricia Hayes was there, smiling. Eleanor and Charles Montgomery, who had become genuine friends. Sam Blake from Devon's company. Mrs. Crawford, the tenant who'd become like an aunt. And at the head table, Lorraine, Jasmine, and Devon. The restaurant looked the same. Crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, elegant southern cuisine. But everything else had changed. Jasmine stood to make a toast. She wore a simple dress, nice but not ostentatious. Her hair was natural. Her smile was genuine. 1 year ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I stood in this room and said some things I deeply regret. I called my mother small. I said she was still at the bus stop while I'd reached my destination. The room was quiet. I was wrong. So completely, devastatingly wrong. She looked at Lorraine, tears in her eyes but voice steady. My mother isn't at the bus stop. She never was. She owns the bus company. She owns the road it drives on. She owns half the destination points it stops at. Soft laughter rippled through the room. But more than that, and this is what I didn't understand, she made the choice to build quietly, to move invisibly. Not because she was ashamed, but because she was strategic. Because she understood that real power doesn't announce itself. It just operates. Jasmine raised her glass. Mama, you're the smartest person I know. You're the strongest person I know. You're the most patient person I know. And if I become half the woman you are, I'll have lived a good life. She walked over to Lorraine and kissed her forehead. Happy birthday, Mama. I love you, and I'm proud to be your daughter. Lorraine stood, embraced Jasmine, and whispered in her ear, I'm proud to be your mother. Jasmine and Lorraine sat in the rocking chairs, the quilts spread across their laps. The phoenix pattern was nearly complete. Vibrant colors rising from darker pieces, transformation made visible in thread and fabric. Mama, show me this section again? This is where you cut away what's damaged, Lorraine said, her fingers tracing the pattern. See how the dark pieces frame the bright ones? You don't pretend the dark pieces never existed. You use them to make the light pieces shine brighter. What do we do with it when it's done? We start another one, and maybe one day, you'll teach your daughter. Jasmine smiled, her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach where a 3-month secret was growing. Maybe I will, she said softly. They rocked in silence, needles moving in rhythm, as the sun set over Atlanta, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a bus drove past, but neither of them was waiting at the stop anymore. They were home. I'm Lorraine Elizabeth Washington. I'm 63 years old now. I learned that at this age, the greatest victory isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's giving them the chance to become better. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent while you build. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is tear down what you built, so the people you love can learn to build for themselves. The greatest inheritance I can leave my daughter isn't money. It's understanding. It's knowing where she comes from. It's knowing that she comes from a line of women who survived slavery, sharecropping, poverty, and disrespect, and still found a way to rise. My grandmother used to say, "The phoenix burns to be reborn." I burned down my daughter's false life so her real life could begin. And now, sitting on my porch with my daughter and my future grandchild, watching the sunset over the city I helped build, literally helped build, with investments in properties and quiet strategic power, I understand what peace really means. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of purpose. If you stayed with me this far, thank you. Drop your city in the comments. Let me know this story reached you. Let me know you understand. And if you have a mother, a grandmother, an elder who's been invisible in your life, look again. Sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones nobody's watching.